Alright, higher calling posse, lock your spurs. You faith-fueled fog shredders. Welcome to day 6 of our 30 days of faith swamp brawl, where we're throat-punching chaos and breakdancing with God Almighty. You're still strapped in, holy smokes. You're tougher than a junkyard gator guzzling rocket fuel. And I'm slinging air bazookas through the screen. We've been torching this rodeo. Day 1. Starting your day with God. My tire exploding Tuesday got a prayer nuke, boom. Chaos ate swamp mud. Day 2. Why faith matters every morning. Faith drop kicked my grumpy dad Wednesday into a grit storm. Day 3. Finding peace before the chaos. Peace ninja start my Monday meltdown into a hush riot. Day 4. A verse to carry you through. Joshua chapter 1 verse 9 napalmed my Tuesday trash heap into a faith bonfire. Day 5. Worship in the quiet moments. Psalm chapter 46 verse 10 unleashed a holy hurricane through my Friday clown show, pow. Worship smoked the circus. Now, day 6 is slinging a gut ripper. Trust when you can't see. Life's a fog-choked swamp gas explosion. Mornings slam like a blindfolded cage match on a jet-powered roller coaster. But what if you could hurl trust like a faith-forged Molotov? Ignite the haze, and moonwalk with God through the blackout? That's our outlaw chaos blaster today. Fam, picture this. You're lost in a swamp-blind apocalypse. Works a soul-sucking vortex-spewing fog thicker than grandma's gravy. Kids are gremlins with glitter cannons. That coffee's vanished into a haze hole. Chaos blindsides you like a ninja with a jackhammer on a Red Bull bender. But trust? That's your holy napalm cannon. Blast through the fog bank. Worship in the dark. God's roaring. I've got your 6. We're storming in for the next hour and a half. Got a Thursday tale of me drowning in swamp stew. Till trust lit a holy wildfire. Some cage-shaking truth bombs from Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. And rebel-grade hacks to sling trust when you're blind as a bat in a blackout blizzard. No fluff, just raw. Rowdy faith that sets the swamp ablaze. Grab your brew, coffee, tea, heck, that moonshine if you're feeling feral, and let's shred this haze. Higher Calling's posse is unleashing a faith riot. Day 6 a trust with a triple-shot swamp twist. America style. Alright, Higher Calling posse, lock your spurs. You faith-fueled swamp torchers. We're bulldozing into day 6. Trust when you can't see. And it's time to sling some holy Molotov napalm on why trust ain't just a fuzzy bunny hug. It's your outlaw flamethrower to shred the fog and strut with God when life's a swamp gas explosion. You're still riding, holy guacamole. You're tougher than a buzzsaw gator on a rocket fuel bender. And we're not tapping the brakes. Life's a fog-choked chaos carnival. Mornings crash like a blindfolded cage match on a jet-powered roller coaster. Swamp haze snorting, horns blaring, works a soul-sucking vortex. Kids are glitter cannon gremlins. Phones buzzing like a hornet's nest on a meth spree. Trust? That's your faith-forged bazooka. Ignite it. Blast it. Torch the blackout. Hebrews chapter 11. One's our gut-punching warhead. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. That's not some preacher's lullaby. It's God slinging a triple-shot dare to trust him when the swamp fog's thicker than grandma's gravy. Saddle up, fam. This ain't your cousin's trust fall. It's a faith-fueled fog-busting riot. America style. So, why's trust the big swamp boss when you can't see jack? 'Cause life's a fog bank straight from the swamp devil's playbook. Chaos blindsides you like a ninja with a jackhammer on a Red Bull bender. Ever wake up to a morning that's a 5-alarm swamp apocalypse? Boss texting, now. Like a drill sergeant on a moonshine binge. Kids' homework lost in the Bermuda Triangle. Coffee maker spewing tar like a dragon with a grudge? That's me, pre-faith. I'm stumbling blind through a haze hole. Ears ringing louder than a foghorn on PCP. Heart jackhammering like a roller coaster crash. No clue where God's hiding in that swamp stink fog. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. Confidence in what we hope for, that's not fairy dust wishes. It's God roaring. Trust me, punk. I'm steering this swamp boat. Ever grope blind and feel like a swamp zombie? That's faith. Trusts your napalm torch, blast the fog. Chaos chokes on its own swamp gas. Let's crank it wild. Blind trusts your VIP swamp pass to God's war wagon. Life's a 24/7 fog-choked circus. Alarms shrieking like banshees on a meth spree. Emails avalanching like a swamp landslide. That neighbor's dog howling like it's auditioning for the apocalypse. Ever feel like you're dodging chaos grenades with a burlap sack over your head? That's me, pre-faith. I'm a fog-blind crash dummy. Faith flatlining. Groping through a swamp with no GPS. God, where's the exit ramp? But Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. Assurance about what we do not see, that's your outlaw badge, eyes shut. Haze thick. Trust slinging. God's got my six. Ever trust blind and feel him roll up? That's the juice, chaos fogs. Faith torches, God's bellowing. I'm your swamp GPS. Cowboy. Why morning? 'Cause that's when fog swamps you like a freight train on a meth binge. Psalm chapter 62 verse 8. Trust in him at all times. Ever wake to a swamp gas haze bomb? Works a black hole sucking your soul. Kids a sock screaming gremlin. Phone's a buzzsaw shredding your sanity? That's me, pre-faith. I'm a blindfolded swamp piñata, boss snarling. Chaos swinging. I'm cussing a coffee spill like it's the Antichrist, trusts DOA by 7 a.m. Confidence in hope. That's your morning Molotov, fog chokes. You ignite, God's steering. Ever trust blind and own the swamp? That's faith. Morning's your fog bank. Trusts your flamethrower. Sling it rowdy. Fog's the devil's swamp smokescreen. Posse. Ever notice chaos cranks the haze? Phone pinging like a piñata on a meth binge. Kids screeching like gremlins on a sugar high. That car alarm wailing like a foghorn's evil twin? That's Satan's swamp gas, blind you. Deafen you. Ditch God in the mist. Faith's a flat tire. Trusts a swamp ghost. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. Assurance we do not see, that's your outlaw kill switch, torch the fog. Crank the trust, God's roaring. I'm here, punk. Ever ditch the haze and feel him strut? That's me, post-faith. Fog's a chump, trusts a swamp blaster, chaos chokes. Faith smokes. Here's the gut ripper. Trust ain't passive, it's a power-packed swamp buster. Confidence. That's not a shrug. It's a swagger, God's flexing. Chaos is cowering. Ever feel life's a fog-choked swamp brawl? Works a vortex. Kids a glitter bomb. You're one spill from a meltdown? That's me, pre-faith. I'm derailed. Growling at a toaster like it's the apocalypse. Trusts a no-show. I'm swamp toast. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. Assurance, that's your rocket fuel, eyes shut. Faith roaring, God's got this. Ever trust blind and feel it shift, like, whoa, I'm standing. That's faith, fog's thick. Trust's thicker, God's your swamp war drum. Why's it faith fuel? Fog scrambles your soul. Isaiah chapter 26 verse 3. You keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you. Ever grope blind, God, where? And faith flatlines. That's me, pre-faith. Ears ringing, soul swamp sinking, no trust. Just trash. Confidence in hope. That's your fog-busting spotlight, haze rolls. Trust cranks, God's here. Ever trust and feel peace hit? That's post-faith. I'm not a mess. I'm a megaphone, trusts my swamp mic. God's my anthem, fog's a chump. Crank it wild, trusts rebel swamp turf. Posse. America's a foghole, hustles howling. Phones blaring like banshees on a meth spree. That TV's screaming infomercials like it's the end times. Ever feel like trusts a middle finger to the haze? That's me, pre-faith. I'm a swamp zombie, ears bleeding. No God in that fog fest. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. What we do not see, that's your outlaw swagger. Blind trusts your torch, God's got me. Ever ditch sight and feel free? That's faith, fog's a punk. Trusts your posse, God's the swamp boss. Practical swamp bite. Mornings are fog blind. Ever wake to a kid's glitter SOS in a work vortex? That's me, flops a blind tantrum. Redoes a trust torch, God's here. Ever trust blind and roll? That's peace, fog fogs. Faith blazes, I'm set. Land it. Trusts your Molotov. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. Your swamp war paint. Confidence, fog chokes. God smokes. Trusts your flamethrower. Chaos's swamp roadkill. Ever trust blind and win? That's faith. Next up. My fog-busting tail. Higher calling slinging it wild. Stay locked. Posse. Alright, higher calling posse. Lock your spurs. You faith-fueled swamp blazers. We're tearing through day 6. Trust when you can't see, and it's time to sling a fog shredding. Gut-ripping yarn that'll slam you like a holy freight train on a moonshine bender. We just torched White Trust's your outlaw Molotov cocktail. Hebrews chapter 11. Once, confidence blasted the swamp haze like a faith-forged rocket launcher. Now, I'm hurling you ringside for a Thursday swamp thrashing that nearly turned me into a fog-choked piñata. Then trust napalmed the blackout with a triple-shot faith brawl. This ain't no sleepy preacher lullaby, it's me. Raw, ragged, and roaring, starring as the chaos crash test dummy in my own swamp gas circus. Two versions. One where I ditched trust and got smoked like a swamp skunk. And one where faith torched the fog and slung me a win. Grab your popcorn, or that swamp stew coffee if you're still clawing out of the haze. And let's wrestle this fog gator of a day. America style. Picture it, Thursday, 5:45 a.m. Alarm blaring like a banshee on a meth-fueled karaoke rampage. I'd stayed up late wrestling a work crisis, client flipped their lid. Deadline's a guillotine, and I'm running on fumes. 2 hours of sleep, eyes like gravel pits in a swamp fog. Phones buzzing, boss texts. Clients on at 8, fix this mess. Wife's hollering, school's canceled, kids home. Dogs whining, chewed my keys. Perfect, I'm locked in fog prison. Haze is thicker than a swamp stew on a moonshine binge, can't see jack. Can't think straight, chaos isn't knocking. It's pile driving through the wall like a monster truck on a meth spree. Horns blaring, swamp gas choking. Ever wake up to a day that's a 5-alarm fog apocalypse, blind, deaf, and dumb before your boots hit the muck? That's me, Thursday. Round 1, I'm down, pinned, and panting like a hog in a swamp hurricane. Version 1, no trust. No faith, just me, a fog-chugging swamp dummy in a blind beatdown. I stumble out, trip over the dog, sorry. Mutt, you're roadkill today, and hit the kitchen like a zombie apocalypse swamp reject. Coffee maker's a traitor, ground's exploding like a swamp volcano. Bruised tar, and I'm out of milk. So it's black sludge or bust. Wife's yelling, kids home. Deal, I'm scrambling eggs like a madman. Snarling at a pan smoking like a dragon swamp lair. Kids whining, I'm bored. I'm tossing a tablet. Barking, watch something, don't torch the place. Phone's pinging, boss, fix it. Now, I'm thinking, yeah, it's lost in the swamp. Pal, no trust, no God, help, just me. A grizzly on a moonshine bender. Juggling flaming swamp chainsaws blindfolded. Ready to torch the whole fog-choked circus. Ever been that swamp clown? Where fog's the ringmaster, and you're getting pelted with flaming swamp pies? That's me, zero chill. All swamp meltdown. Thursday's got me in a fog lock. I'm tapping out by 7. Next up, kids a swamp tornado. Eggs are charcoal swamp bricks. I'm yelling, stay out on my swamp hair. Cars fogged in, can't see the driveway. I'm creeping like a swamp snail on tranquilizers. Cussing at a windshield that's a swamp stew curtain. Back home. Pitches a swamp dumpster fire. Client's date is lost in the haze hole. I'm slamming keys, growling at a laptop buffering like it's mocking me with swamp dial-up. Boss calls. Where's the fix? I'm like, in fog hell. Man, kids screaming, wife's scowl could melt swamp steel. I Uber eats a swamp pizza. Pitch flops. Clients fuming. I'm a puddle of fog-soaked swamp regret by 9. No trust, no faith. Just a swamp-blind tornado wrecking my vibe. Ever feel that? Where fog's a swamp gator, and you're the chump getting chomped? That's Thursday, no sight, no win, just a faith flatlining swamp disaster flick starring yours truly. Now, rewind, same Thursday, trust redo, alarm's still a banshee on a karaoke rampage. I'm still a swamp zombie, but I don't roll over and curse the fog gods. I hit pause, right there in the swamp sheets. And growl, God, I'm blind, torch it. Quick breath. Day 1 style, breathe. Thank, ask, thanks I'm kicking. Swamp's nuts, lead me. Then Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1 napalms in. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Takes 15 ticks, eyes swamp gritty. Brain a fog stew, but I hurl a trust Molotov, God. I can't see, you do. Ever try that? Just a ragged swamp grunt when fog's clawing your guts? That's my outlaw torch, game on. Thursday. Kitchen's still a swamp war zone, coffee's tar. No milk. I don't go full swamp Godzilla. God's got me, sip the sludge. Smirk. Fuel's fuel, trust you. Wife's hollering, kids home, I sling eggs. Humming. Confidence in hope, they're edible. Not swamp arson. I'm grinning, not growling. Kids whining, bored, I toss a puzzle. Assurance. Bud, God's here, we're giggling. Not griping. Cars fogged, I creep. Whispering, I don't see, you do, not cussing. Just chilling like a swamp faith outlaw. Pitch, God. Lead blind, grind it out. Send it raw but real, boss doesn't torch me. Fog lifts, swamp miracle. Kids swamp chaos, wife scowls, I shrug. Faith's got us pizza rolls. We're steady. Ever trust blind and not crash? That's faith, fog's thick. Trust's thicker, God's here. What's the diff? No, trust me's a swamp volcano, lava spewing at eggs. Kids, fog, zero wins. All swamp wipeout. Trust me's not Iron Man, fog's still swamp stew. Pitch is still raw, but I'm not erupting. Ever notice that? Trust didn't zap the fog or fix the data. It zapped my swamp panic, assurance, fog swung. I danced. Ever trust blind and feel it? That's Thursday. Faith turned a swamp flop into a, not today. Fog devil. Unpack the swamp juice. No trust me's a faith zombie. Staggering blind. Ever grit your swamp teeth, till you crack? That's flop, swamp circus. Crashing hard. Trust redo? I slung the swamp mic, God. You lead, fog didn't lift. But my vibe did. Trust's my torch. Worships my swamp roar. Ever trust and feel the flip? That's faith, fog's a chump. God's the swamp boss. Practical swamp bite. Days are fog blind. Ever wake to a kid's chaos SOS and a work guillotine? That's me. Flops a blind swamp tantrum. Redo's a trust torch. God's got me. Ever trust blind and roll? That's peace, fog fogs. Faith blazes, I'm set. Land it. No trust Thursday's a swamp wreck, blind swamp dummy. Stay back. Trust Thursday's a swamp banger, confidence, fog choked. Faith smoked, trusts my Molotov. Chaos is swamp roadkill. Ever trust blind and win? That's faith, next. Bible swamp bombs, higher calling slinging it wild, stay locked. Posse. Alright, higher calling posse, lock your swamp boots. You faith-fueled fog shredders. We're blasting through day 6. Trust when you can't see, and it's time to crack the good book like a vault of holy napalm grenades. We've torched white trusts your outlaw Molotov, my Thursday swamp thrashing flipped from fog-choked pinata to trust-slinging renegade with Hebrews chapter 11. One's gut ripper. Now, let's strap on our Bible spurs and stomp into scripture. God's not tossing you some fluffy swamp lullaby. He's slinging cage-match swamp torches to school us on trusting him when the fog's thicker than a gator's moonshine stew. We're writing Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see, and Psalm chapter 23 verse 4. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. These ain't dusty preacher lines, they're God's outlaw swamp playbook for cranking trust when chaos is a fog-blind buzzsaw. No fluff, just swamp-busting faith. Let's sling some holy heat and rattle the fog. America style. First swamp torch. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This ain't no fairy dust hope bubble. It's God throwing a triple-shot swamp grenade in a fog-choked brawl. Picture the Hebrews posse, faith legends. Blind as bats in a swamp fog. Slinging trust like Molotov cocktails at chaos giants. Fog's thicker than swamp gravy, future's a haze hole, but they're like. God's got us. Ever feel life's a fog bank apocalypse? Work texting, now, like a swamp drill sergeant on meth. Kids a glitter gremlin. Phone buzzing like a swamp hornet's nest on a bender? That's me, Thursday flop. Ears swamp ringing. No trust. Just fog choking me blind. Confidence in hope. That's God's swamp warhorn, trust me. Punk, I'm steering. Ever trust blind and feel him torch it? That's faith, fog swamps. Trust blazes. Chaos taps out like a swamp chump. Why's it a trust banger? Assurance about what we do not see, that's not a shrug. It's a swamp swagger, God's flexing. Fogs cowering. Ever notice chaos cranks the haze? Alarms shrieking like swamp banshees on a meth spree. Emails avalanching like a swamp landslide? That's me, pre-faith. I'm a fog-blind crash dummy, trusts DOA in that swamp racket. Hebrews chapter 11. One's your swamp kill switch. Assurance, fog's a piñata. Chaos whacking away, but you're cranking trust, God's here. Ever sling blind faith and feel him roar? That's me, post-faith redo, fog's a swamp chump. Trusts my swamp torch, God's bellowing. I'm your swamp GPS. Next, Psalm chapter 23 verse 4. David slinging swamp gold. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. This ain't no picnic stroll, it's swamp warrior David. Fog thicker than a gator's moonshine brew. Dodging Death Valley wolves. Ever feel life's a swamp blind death trap? Works a buzzsaw vortex. Kids a sock screaming swamp gremlin. Phone's a foghorn on a meth rampage? That's me, Thursday flop. No trust, just swamp fog clawing my guts. I will fear no evil, that's David's swamp outlaw move. God's got me, fog swamps. Trust kicks, chaos blinks. Ever trust blind and feel no swamp fear? That's faith. You are with me, God's your swamp posse, fog's roadkill. Why swamp duo? For you are with me, God's not ghosting, he's swamp stomping right there. Fog's Satan's swamp smokescreen, ever grow blind, God. Where? That's me, flop, no trust. Faith flatlining in that swamp buzzsaw. Psalm chapter 23. Four's your swamp kill shot. God's here, trust cranks, no fear. Ever trust and feel him swamp side? That's redo, Thursday, you're with me, fog choked. Faith smoked, God's my swamp boss. Why mornings? Fog swamps at dawn. Isaiah chapter 50 verse 10. Let him trust in the name of the Lord. Ever wake to a swamp fog bomb, works a black hole. Kids a chaos cannon. Phone's a swamp buzzsaw? That's me, flop. Blind swamp piñata. Trust swamp toast by 7. Assurance unseen. That's your morning swamp torch, fog roars. Trust blazes, God's steering. Ever trust blind and swamp slay? That's faith, morning swamp haze. Trust swamp flame. Tag team swamp heat. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1, S your torch, confidence, God's leading. Fog's bleeding. Psalm chapter 23. Four's your posse, no fear, God's stomping. Chaos dropping. Ever feel that swamp combo? Fog who? That's faith, trusts your swamp war cry, God's got me. Ever sling it and swamp strut? That's redo, Thursday, assurance, trust kicked. Fog quit. Practical swamp bite. Mornings are fog choked. Ever wake to a kid's swamp SOS and a work vortex? That's me, flops a blind swamp tantrum. Redo's a trust torch, God's here. Ever trust blind and swamp roll? That's swamp peace, fog swamps. Faith blazes, I'm set. Land it, Hebrews and Psalm? Swamp napalm, confidence, and, no fear, fog's a punk. God's the swamp king, trusts your flamethrower. Chaos is swamp roadkill. Ever trust blind and swamp win? That's faith. Next, swamp hacks. Higher calling slinging it wild, stay locked. Posse. Alright, higher calling posse. Strap your swamp boots. You faith-fueled fog shredders. We're blitzing day 6. Trust when you can't see. And it's time to sling some holy swamp napalm and torch the haze. We've blasted white trusts your outlaw Molotov. My Thursday swamp thrashing flipped from fog-blind piñata to trust-slinging swamp warrior with Hebrews chapter 11. One's gut ripper. Scripture smoked it. Confidence, and, no fear, hog-tied chaos in a swamp showdown. Now, it's swamp go time. How do you crank this blind trust when fog's thicker than a gator's moonshine stew? This ain't no fluffy swamp yoga trust circle, it's your gritty, swamp-gutted playbook to hurl faith like a flaming buzzsaw when life's a fog-choked swampocalypse. We're writing Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see, with a 7-day swamp brawl to lock it down. No snooze, just raw. Rebel swamp faith. Let's swamp torch this fog and crank trust loud. America style. First swamp torch. Plant trust like an outlaw snagging swamp loot at dawn. Morning's your swamp heist. Fog don't wait for noon to swamp slam you blind. Wake up, Alarms a banshee on a meth-fueled swamp karaoke spree, God. Hebrews chapter 11, trust blind. Takes 10 swamp ticks, sling it. Growl it, own it, eyes swamp gritty. Brain a fog stew, but you're shredding the haze. Ever wake to a swamp fog fest? Work texting, now, like a swamp drill sergeant on a moonshine binge. Kids a glitter cannon gremlin. Phone buzzing like a swamp hornet's nest on a meth rampage? That's me, Thursday flop. No trust, just swamp chaos pile driving me blind. Redo? Confidence in hope. I slung faith before swamp coffee brewed, trust cranked. Fog choked. Ever snatch blind trust and feel it swamp ignite, like holy swamp juice. God's here. That's step 1, plant it deep. Sling it early. Faith's your swamp outlaw buzzsaw. Next, crank it all day. Posse. Don't just plant and swamp ghost. Sling that trust like a swamp boombox blasting outlaw swamp jams. Driving, assurance unseen. Kids whining, God's got me. Boss barking, hope's here. Ever loop a swamp riff, till it's swamp muscle? Like that jingle stuck in your swamp skull? That's me, Thursday redo. Fog's a swamp stew. I'm growling. Assurance, not cussing the swamp windshield like it's my ex's swamp ghost. Lunch. Confidence, not hulking out at a swamp sandwich flop. Ever crank trust and feel it swamp flex? That's faith. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1, my fog-busting swamp war cry, chaos roars. I'm slinging blind, trust's pumping like a swamp V8 tearing up a swamp trail. How? Sling it loud, say it, grunt it, swamp roar it, ever mutter, I'm swamp set. That's me, Thursday. Hope's here, cars fogged swamp style. I'm steady, not flipping swamp birds like a grizzly on a moonshine bender. Traffic, assurance unseen, not snarling. Just chilling like a swamp faith outlaw. Ever whisper trust and feel the swamp zap? Takes 0, shower, car, swamp coffee spill, God's got me. Thursday redo, confidence pitches raw. I'm humming, not hammering swamp keys like a fog-blind lunatic. Ever sling it mid-swamp haze and swamp strut? That's the swamp heist, trust's your swamp mic. Faith's your swamp stage, God's rocking. Fog's swamp roadkill. Why all day? Fog don't clock out. Psalm chapter 37 verse 5. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him. Day's a swamp blind buzzsaw. Ever feel it swamp charge from dawn? That's me, Thursday flop. No trust, just swamp horns. Faith's DOA by 10. Assurance unseen. That's your all-day swamp outlaw fuel, fog bucks. You're steady, trust's your swamp spurs. Ever trust blind and swamp crush it? That's redo. God's leading, I'm not a swamp pinata. I'm a swamp posse, trust's my swamp saddle. Faith's my swamp ride. Challenge time, 7 days. Posse. Ignite it tomorrow. Day 1. Confidence, kid spills swamp glitter. Your swamp chill. Day 2. Assurance, traffic fog swamp style. Your swamp steady. Day 3. Hope's here, boss swamp growls. You swamp grin. Day 7. Swamp outlaw swagger, fog storms. Trust swamp torches, catch this swamp faith. Chump, ever stick a swamp riff and swamp own it? Scribble it. Day 1. Slung it, didn't swamp snap. Flop, reload, no swamp sweat. God's not grading your swamp aim, He's slinging your swamp napalm. Practical swamp grit, no time? 5 swamp ticks, hope's here. Shower, assurance, car, confidence. Ever sneak swamp trust and swamp roll? Thursday redo. Hebrews chapter 11, kids swamp chaos. I'm swamp steady, trust's my swamp outlaw torch. Not a swamp tantrum, fog swamp swings. Trust swamp fires, God's got me. Ever dodge a swamp meltdown with one swamp sling? That's it, crank it. Fog swamp chokes. Faith's your swamp wildcard. Why's it swamp stick? Proverbs chapter 3 verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Fog jams your swamp vibe. Ever grope swamp blind, God. Where? That's me, flop. No trust. Just swamp stew. Faith swamp flat. Redo? Confidence, caught the swamp haze. Torched the swamp crazy. Trust swamp blazing. Fog's swamp toast. Ever trust and feel it swamp light up? That's faith, fog's a swamp punk. Trust's your swamp posse, God's the swamp boss. Paint it swamp style, day 1. Alarms a swamp beast, hope's here. Coffee flops, you smirk. Day 2. Kids swamp wild, assurance. Your swamp steady. Day 7. Trusts your swamp rocket, fog bucks. Faith swamp blasts, God's here. Ever surprise yourself with swamp chill? That's you, next week. Swamp faith outlaw rocking holy swamp napalm. Why Hebrews chapter 11. Confidence, swamp guts when fog's a swamp bull. Assurance, swamp cover when it swamp roars. Ever need both, swamp guts and glue? Thursday. Hope for kid swamp chaos. Assurance, for work swamp haze, trust swamp kicked. Fog swamp quit, ever sling it and swamp strut? That's faith, trusts your swamp warhorn. God's your swamp posse. Land it, plant it, crank it, 7 days. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1, your swamp outlaw stash, sling it daily, trust swamp roars. Fog's swamp roadkill, higher callings tearing it loose, next up. Swamp rap, stay swamp locked. Posse. Alright, higher calling posse. Day 6 of swamp fogs torched. And y'all are faith-fueled swamp blazers shredding this swamp rodeo. Big swamp props for brawling this fog-blind bull with me. You're tougher than a gator chugging moonshine on a rocket fuel bender. And I'm slinging swamp air cannons through the screen. We've been napalming trust when you can't see, like a holy Molotov swamp riot. Over an hour and a half of fog-busting chaos carnage. We kicked off with trust as your outlaw swamp torch. Hebrews chapter 11. Once, confidence, lit the swamp haze like a faith-forged buzzsaw. I slung my Thursday swamp thrashing, trust flipped a fog-choked piñata into a swamp-slaying win. Scripture smoked the swamp, assurance, and, no fear, hog-tied chaos with swamp napalm. Then we cranked it swamp practical, plant trust. Sling it all day. 7-day swamp showdown locked and loaded. If you're still swamp riding this chaos-crushing gator, you're a faith swamp outlaw. Higher callings posse is tearing it swamp wild. America style. Let's torch this swamp rap and sling you off with trust ammo blazing. Quick swamp rewind. What did we snag today? Trust ain't no fluffy swamp lullaby. It's your faith-forged swamp napalm. Your fog-shredding Molotov when life's a swamp gas buzzsaw brawl. Day 1 prayer nuked my Tuesday tire shredder. Psalm chapter 143 verse 8 smoked swamp chaos. Day 2 faith choke slammed my Wednesday grump swamp. Romans chapter 12 verse 2 lit swamp grit. Day 3 peace ninja start my Monday swamp meltdown. Psalm chapter 23 verse 4 hushed the swamp storm. Day 4 slung Joshua chapter 1 verse 9, torched my Tuesday swamp trash into a faith swamp blaze. Day 5 cranked worship in the swamp hush. Psalm chapter 46 verse 10 turned my Friday swamp circus into a holy swamp ruckus. Now, day 6 a trust in the swamp fog. Hebrews chapter 11. One's assurance is your swamp outlaw warhorn, chaos fogs up. Trust swamp torches, God's roaring. I've got your swamp 6. Ever trust blind and feel the swamp haze lift, like holy swamp juice. Fog's swamp toast. That's swamp faith. Trusts your swamp buzzsaw. Chaos's swamp roadkill. Posse's rocking the swamp haze. Big swamp alert. Trusts your swamp turbo. Fam, life's a fog-choked swamp freight train. Mornings hit like a blindfolded swamp cage match on a jet swamp roller coaster. Works a swamp vortex spewing haze. Kids slinging swamp glitter bombs. Phones a swamp banshee on a meth binge. Fog wants you swamp lost. God wants you swamp locked. Confidence in hope, it's not a shrug. It's a swamp swagger, chaos swamp blinks. Faith swamp kicks. Ever ditch swamp sight and feel him? That's Thursday redo. Trust turned a swamp meltdown into a faith-fueled swamp mic drop. God's swamp here. I'm not a swamp piñata. I'm a swamp posse slinging swamp assurance. This 30-day swamp faith hauls stacking swamp wins, one blind swamp torch. Then another. Chaos gets swamp smoked every swamp dang day. Next swamp move, tomorrow. Posse. Sling it swamp style. Crack that Bible, or your swamp phone if you're a fog-blind swamp cowboy. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. Confidence. Swamp torch it, God. I can't see, you swamp can. Swamp crank it, assurance here. Takes 15 swamp ticks, sling it in swamp bed. Swamp shower. Over that swamp stew coffee, before chaos swamp storms like a bull on a meth swamp binge. That's day 1 of 7, write it. Swamp posse. Day 3. Maybe you're not swamp growling at fog, day 7. You're a swamp trust slinging outlaw, chaos swamp charges. Faith swamp torches, catch this swamp assurance. Chump, ever trust swamp blind and swamp own it? Drop a swamp comment, day 1. Slung it. Didn't swamp snap. I'm reading every swamp tale. Swear on my swamp kids glitter pile. Swamp sub up. Day 7's, hope that holds, we're cranking hotter than a Texas swamp chainsaw. Don't swamp sweat the flops. I'm the swamp fog crash king. Thursday no trust me? A swamp volcano, lava swamp spewing at kids. Fog, keys, 0 swamp chill. All swamp wipeout, trust me? Not swamp Iron Man, fog's still swamp stew. Pitches still swamp raw, but I'm not swamp torching my vibe, assurance, chaos swamp choked. Faith swamp smoked, ever swamp bomb and swamp bounce? That's this, no swamp guilt. Just swamp grit, miss a day? Kid's a swamp banshee, phone's a swamp buzzsaw, reload. God's not grading your swamp hustle, he's slinging your swamp napalm. Ever swamp trust and swamp crush it? That's you, next week. Swamp faith outlaw rocking holy swamp haze. Why's it swamp worth it? Days swamp fog up like a swamp stew. Chaos don't swamp play fair. Ever swamp start blind and swamp crash by lunch. That's me, no swamp trust. Just swamp fumes, swamp toast by noon. Ever swamp trust blind and swamp slay the haze? That's swamp faith. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1 swamp led me when fog should have swamp won. Thursday redo wasn't swamp Hollywood. Keys didn't swamp spawn. But I didn't swamp lose my soul. Trust swamp cranked assurance. Faith swamp cranked me. This 30-day swamp hauls piling swamp fog busting winds. One swamp blind trust torch. Then another. Till you're a swamp faith inferno shredding swamp chaos. Real swamp talk, y'all are like, cool, but I'm swamp lost, works a swamp vortex. Kids are swamp gremlins. I swamp feel yaw. Life's a swamp fog choked meat grinder. Mornings are a swamp blind bull run. Trust's a swamp unicorn. Right? Swamp wrong. Sling it in the swamp cracks. 10 swamp ticks over swamp coffee, God. I'm swamp blind, swamp lead. 5 swamp seconds at the swamp sink, assurance. Ever swamp sneak trust and not swamp explode? That's swamp Thursday, confidence, fog swamp roared. I swamp rocked, trusts my swamp warhorn. Haze's swamp roadkill, you don't swamp need a cave. Just swamp guts to swamp sling it. Higher calling swamp posse don't swamp blink. Last swamp zinger, Psalm chapter 62 verse 8, trust in him at all times. That's your swamp stash, assurance unseen, swamp locked in. Fog can't swamp snatch it. God's swamp roaring, I'm swamp here. Ever swamp feel that trust swamp torch, I'm swamp set. That's swamp faith, fog's your swamp chump. Trust's your swamp posse, God's the swamp boss. Final swamp shove, tomorrow. Posse, swamp ignited. God, Hebrews chapter 11, swamp trust blind. Swamp watch, fog's swamp nuts. Your swamp chill, kids swamp chaos. Your swamp steady, trust swamp slays. Haze swamp praise. Day 7. Hope that holds, we're swamp digging deeper, don't swamp ditch. Swamp fam, bring your swamp coffee, your swamp haze, your swamp grit, higher calling swamp tearing it loose. Big swamp thanks for swamp riding, you could have swamp binged reruns. But your swamp slinging faith with me, that's no swamp small potatoes. Your swamp posse, swamp sleep tight. Tomorrow's got a swamp trust torch waiting to swamp blaze, drop, day 6. Swamp trusted, swamp winning, higher calling swamp posse. Let's swamp keep this swamp faith inferno roaring. Swamp catch yaw soon, God swamp bless. Y'all.